Let's talk about unpaid internships, the good, the bad, things to avoid, and how to get the most out of your experience. So, what I want to do here is break down both sides of the conversation, and I actually want to start with the naysayers. So, I want to start with the people that have had the negative experience or have their fears because that is going to be the more passionate side of the argument. So, we'll start there, and what I'm going to do here is actually summarize a Twitter Spaces conversation that we had with several hundred developers. We had people come forward and share their stories, their experiences, and have sort of an open debate about this conversation. So I want to summarize that and share a few things with that Spaces group and also my personal experience. So the first thing I want to do here is share one of the negative stories that came forward. So somebody started speaking in the group, they came up on the panel, and they shared their experience where they actually went in for an unpaid internship, and this internship was supposed to last for 6 months. So the position was unpaid and it was for a developer position. So this person took on that position. They wanted to do their best. They were working really hard. They were coming in really early, leaving really late, which is the first red flag there. And they started getting loaded on with tasks that weren't even part of that position. So they started getting assignments for marketing, for administrative work, and they really took on everything. And by the time that 6-month period came around, they were basically told that, hey, we really like you, but you're not really that good of a developer yet, so let's go ahead and try this for another 6 months. Now, this story right here is extremely unfortunate because that person was clearly taken advantage of, and this is what a lot of people point to when it comes to the negative side of things and pointing out companies that are predatory or just take advantage of people, whether they know it or not. And this is usually the first argument that comes in right here. So with this, what I want to do is point out some of the red flags and things to look for and what really went wrong here. So the first thing is when we were talking to this person, we were giving him some advice. The first thing that we kind of came up with was that in this interview process, the first red flag you should look for is going to be, or not the red flag, but the questions to ask is going to be the position itself and what you're going to be doing. The more specifics you can get, the more things you can point to, and the more you can understand if the company really knows what they're talking and if they're serious about the position. If it's somebody just from HR looking for a helping hand at the company, you usually want to stay away from that because they'll just assign you somewhere and you'll end up just being lost in the company and getting the runaround. So if you can get that specific position, if you can maybe, if it's not the person that's going to be working with you, try asking for that person's name, try to interview them and get some more details about it. But if a company can be very specific and keep you on a task right there, that's usually a pretty good sign if they know exactly what you're going to be doing and what's expected of you. The second thing is the time spent at work. If this is an internship, you should not be worked like an employee. You're there on your own time. Yes, you're trying to prove yourself. Yes, you should work very hard, but that should be on your terms, not the company's. The company should not expect you to overwork like that, or once you do, you should be getting paid for that, or you should start asking for that. If an internship, if the purpose of it is to gain some experience and to get back knowledge and valued experience from the company, then you should give according to that too. Again, you should always give a lot of, or I guess all of yourself when it comes to work, but you should also be getting something back from the company. You should be getting taught something, getting valuable knowledge. If you don't feel like you're getting that, you need to walk away from that. Now, when it comes to getting more tasks loaded up, you do want to be a team player. Usually I know companies will do that because in many smaller companies, you are going to be wearing multiple hats. Now, when a company is asking that of you, that's kind of a gray area where you need to be careful, but you do want to show that you're willing to do that, but you just need to be careful and watch out that you're not going away from your original plan. In this case, she was supposed to be a developer, and then the excuse for the company was that, oh, you're not that good of a developer. Well, they should have been teaching you in that 6-month period. So the advice that I would give is to be very cautious with that. Have regular checkups. I know it's going to be hard. We don't want to talk about money, but take a temperature check with the company. Talk with other employees about, I mean, you could talk about raises, that's hard, but try to open up these kind of conversations and try to be realistic with yourself. If you feel like you're getting the cold shoulder or the runaround, walk away from that company. Any company that is teaching you, that is giving you that internship needs to be very open with you, and they need to provide you with all that information. Now, there was also the other conversation about loyalty too. She was afraid that they were going to see her as disloyal if she went somewhere else. The thing about that is you should have no loyalty to that company in an internship. I mean, even once you're working with a company, you always got to be careful there because companies can drop you very fast. So I get wanting to be loyal, but you don't want to, or you are no way obligated to be stuck with that company if you're not getting paid. The second you take an internship, you can be looking for other internships. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not disloyalty. That's you looking for other opportunities. What if you start an internship and there's a company that's hiring a month later that happens to accept you? A company should either want to pay you if you're leaving, or they should be happy for you and just let you go freely. So definitely don't hesitate to still look around and ask questions. But I would say the red flags would be not being specific and being careful in the work you're doing and how much you're working, and just keep a constant update and check, I guess, do a temperature check on the environment of the company. Stay consistent with that. Now, on the positive side, this is going to be my personal argument for internships because I think they are amazing. If I had to relive my developer experience, if I had to start all over again, this is the route I would take. I went on the path of starting to freelance. I started taking on my own clients, which is a much harder path. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone because there's so much more skills that you will have to pick up. You'll have to learn how to market, how to advertise yourself, all this. Freelancing could be tough. Now with internships, this is a great chance, especially if you're somebody that's not confident in your skills. If you're not confident, what else do you expect from a company if you don't feel like you can produce? A lot of people can stress themselves out, they'll fail their interviews, and that's it. So this is where I think an internship is going to be an amazing experience. You come in, you expect work from the company, you gain that experience, and in many cases, the company will be the one that hires you. And if not, you now have experience under your belt. Now, from the perspective of somebody that's been hiring, there's always this catch-22 where if you don't have experience, nobody wants you, but in order to gain experience, you need to get a job. So it's kind of like, what comes first here? This is where internships come in handy. If you're able to get that experience, I know if you're interviewing with me, if you can show me an internship that you've done, you can talk about your work. I know that somebody has validated you. I'd probably ask for a reference, call up the company, but that's a great chance to jump into this. Now, in our conversation, this is actually a conversation outside of the Twitter Spaces, but somebody at one point brought up the counter argument and they said, I've paid all this money for school. There's no way I'm going to work for free. I'm very valuable. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and assume that this person already had the knowledge. Let's say they couldn't be taught that much more. You can always learn more, but let's say they were ready to produce, because I believe once you're able to produce, you should get paid. Well, in this case, I asked the person, how long have you been out of a job for? And they said, it's been 2 years since I've graduated. I still can't get a job. This person was saying their main reason was the fact that they didn't have experience and nobody wanted to hire them for that. What if this person went in, took an internship, let's say worked 3 to 6 months, in that process was still applying for companies? If you take that internship, you just knock down what was, in this case, the barrier was experience. You knocked that down and you could have had a job after 6 months. Instead of that, because they didn't swallow their pride and just went and, maybe they could have started marketing themselves better, but because they didn't want to take that unpaid internships, they lost 1.5 years of their life if they could have had a job after 6 months, because 6 months is enough time to gain valuable experience and to look credible. So that's one argument. I think it's a great way to get your foot in the door. If you don't have knowledge, you can learn. If you do have knowledge and you can produce, I get where that's tougher, but if you can get that experience, that can help. So if you're looking for, if you're somebody that has taken those unpaid internships, you have the experience, at that point, you just need to, that's a whole different conversation. You need to need to learn how to market yourself better. There's just different things that you can do that kind of goes outside of the scope of this video, but I'm talking more about the people that are A, trying to get experience, or B, trying to get knowledge. Now, there was another story that really adds to this argument of why there's such a good thing. So there was somebody in this Twitter Spaces, it's Santiago, I'll link him up here and link up his Twitter account. He was talking about his daughter applying for an unpaid internship. She had the choice between, I believe it was for a law firm, or the other position was for an accounting firm, or she could have went and got a job right away. And I get that this person's younger, but look at this example. This law firm or accounting firm probably would have never hired her for that position. She would have never had that experience. She would have had to go to the books or to school to figure that out. But now at 16 years old, she now has experience, and a company can actually teach her and maybe even prime somebody for a position when 3 years go by and maybe she graduates and now they at least know her, there's a relationship, and she has that experience. These kind of opportunities wouldn't be there if it weren't for unpaid internships. Now, if you look at these internships, who they really hurt as far as the company standpoint, it's usually the little companies, because companies like Google or the bigger FANG companies have the money to spend for these positions. They can pay any kind of intern. It doesn't really hurt their budget. But what about the smaller company that is looking for a developer that pays well and they can't afford to test the market? I've had this myself where I would spend thousands of dollars on a developer at my company. I would hire somebody and then would have to let them go, restart that training experience. And it was just way too costly to spend time and money on these employees. And that's where internships really help, because if somebody's willing to put that forward, that's the first, in my experience as the employer, the green flag to say this person might be a good fit, because the first check kind of goes off that list. They're willing to work for something and I can feel them out. So from a company's perspective, it really helps the smaller companies. Now, just to summarize all of this, we kind of ended up going into, well, what can we do about this? And we basically were talking about like a review system, maybe something like Glassdoor for this, or just education about this topic. I know this is a touchy subject. I'm sometimes hesitant to make these videos because I'm going to get the counter arguments and the aggressive, I guess, attacks on me for it. But this is how I believe we solve it. When you look at the restaurant industry or small business industry, before, let's say 2010 or whenever Yelp and all these companies started coming around and creating these review systems, companies in theory could treat their customers badly if they wanted, and there wouldn't be that many repercussions. You can tell your friends, but that's about it. But once companies are held accountable, once you can actually review them, they're going to be much less likely to treat you badly, and they'll care much more about serving you and making sure you have a good experience, because a bad review can hurt them online. And that's where they're hesitant. So that's where we're talking about like a Glassdoor or any other websites where you can review your employer. Now, we did kind of agree the fact that I'm not sure about Glassdoor. I'm not sure exactly how it works because I don't use it, but apparently you have to put your profile on there, and people were afraid of putting their information on and then the company basically slamming them and giving them a bad rap in the industry to where they can't get hired after that. So people won't review a bad company because they're afraid of the repercussions for themselves. Now, I guess as developers, let's look at the solution to this. Let's maybe create something like that. Let's create a platform, make this that's anonymous. And one issue that comes up with this is the fact that now if we can review a company anonymously, we can just lie and write bad reviews. There's ways to fix that. There's ways to validate your status without revealing your position there as the former employer. But I think systems like that should be put in place. Knowledge like this, when we can talk to each other, talk to other developers that maybe have had that negative experience and the good experience, and look for things to look out for. If you've had a bad experience or a good experience, share that down in the comment section. When we talk about this, when we open up the conversation, this is where we can fix it. To just give a blanket statement and say that they're a scam or they're always good, that's not true. There are plenty of companies that pry on individuals and getting free work. There are companies that do it without realizing because of bad management. And then there are companies that do it great and they can actually provide you with a lot of value. So we shouldn't just come to a final consensus. We should look at all perspectives, all of these, and understand that there's good and bad. And we should constantly strive to share, to communicate, and to talk about what we can do. So I hope you enjoyed this video. For those of you that were in that Twitter Spaces group, thanks for joining that. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in another video.